The movie begins with the main character, Liu Yi, a former gangster boss who has retired and is now trying to live in peace. He does not want people to call him grandfather or use his real name. He prefers to be called Mr. Six. Despite his past, people in the neighborhood respect him a lot. He likes to go for walks in the morning and is usually very quiet. Mr. Six hears a commotion in the direction of the street he is about to cross. He discovers that a policeman is arguing with an old street vendor, Deng Zhao, who used to be Mr. Six's subordinate. Their argument escalated to the point where the policeman slapped him in front of everyone. Knowing that the person involved was his former right-hand man, Mr. Six asks the policeman what happened between them. The policeman replies that Deng Zhao complained when he wanted to confiscate his car. Deng Zhao does not have a license to do business there, and according to the law, he has to confiscate his car. Deng Zhao gets angry and damages the police car. Mr. Six convinced Deng Zhao to let the police take the car. He also gave the police money as compensation for the damage to the car. Since the police had slapped Deng Zhao, Mr. Six wants to return the favor. So he slaps the policeman as hard as he can. Mr. Six then tells the policeman to control his anger and not to use violence when he is in trouble. Then the policeman leaves. The next day, Mr. Six helps Deng Zhao build his new car. They talk about Mr. Six's son, Xiaobo, whom he has not seen for 6 months because he ran away from home. Deng Zhao tells Mr. Six to look for him, because he is worried that Xiaobo will choose the wrong company. Mr. Six receives a phone call from the police informing him that one of his friends, Scrapper, has been arrested. So he goes to the salon of his old friend Hua Xiazi to borrow money from her. After taking the money, Mr. Six goes to the police station to free Scrapper, a former member of his gang. And it is Scrapper who got the address of Xiaobo, who is now living in an apartment. And even though he doesn't look like it, Mr. Six is worried about him. The next day, Mr. Six goes to the address Scrapper gave him with a box of food. He sees Xiaobo's shoes on a shelf outside the door and is convinced that Xiaobo really lives there. The door opens shortly after, but it is not Xiaobo who opens it, but his friend. A few days earlier he came home looking upset, and last night he was kidnapped by someone. His friend recorded the moment of his abduction and showed it to Mr. Six. But the video does not provide enough clues for Mr. Six to find Xiaobo. So he goes to some of Xiaobo's acquaintances to get more clues. He finds out that Xiaobo is dating the girlfriend of the leader of a street racing gang. The gang leader, Chris, became angry when he found out that Xiaobo had kidnapped his girlfriend and beat him up. But Xiaobo retaliated by scratching his expensive car. He told Xiaobo he had 3 days to fix his car or he would kill him. Mr. Six, worried, continued to seek information from other people to find out Xiaobo's whereabouts. So Mr. Six met him, pretending to be a package deliveryman to avoid suspicion. As soon as he could, he grabbed him by the throat and interrogated him, asking where Xiaobo was. The man cannot help but tell Mr. Six whatever he wants. And he is happy to accompany him. But on the way, Mr. Six feels sick because the man is driving too fast. So he asks him to stop for a moment. Just then, a sports car stops in front of him. And the driver of the car is none other than Chris. Mr. Six and Chris exchange a look without saying anything until Chris backs up and drives away. The man with the glasses chases after Chris, leaving Mr. Six alone on the street. The next morning, while having breakfast with his friends, Mr. Six receives advice from Hua Xiazi and Scrapper. She suggests that he report the kidnapping to the police, while Scrapper tells him that he should kill Chris and the rest of his gang. But Mr. Six does not accept either of these ideas and tells him to be patient and let things work out in his own way. Mr. Six then goes alone to the meeting place of Chris' gang. He asks Chris to let him see Xiaobo, and Chris allows him to do so. Xiaobo is rude and disrespectful to his father, so Mr. Six gets angry and kicks him. Mr. Six still wants to help his son, so he offers Chris 2,000 yuan, hoping it will be enough to compensate him for his car. According to Chris, at least 100,000 is needed to repair the car, money he probably does not have. But Mr. Six is patient and asks Chris to wait 3 days before paying Xiaobo's debt. When he returns, Mr. Six meets his friends for dinner and tells them about his and Xiaobo's problem. Although Hua Xiazi knows that Chris is not just any young man, he is the son of an influential official, and because of his father's power, he can escape the law even if he kills someone. But all these stories don't scare Mr. Six. So Mr. Six goes to his former subordinates in Beijing to borrow money. But given their living conditions, it is impossible for them to help him. One of them even went into debt to pay for his sick wife's treatment. But Mr. Six does not give up. Then he goes to the home of Matchstick, a former member of his gang who is now a successful businessman. But when he gets there, Matchstick tells him that he has to meet his client. Hearing this hurts him, because he feels that Matchstick no longer considers him a friend. He refuses even when Matchstick offers to give him money. So Mr. Six goes back to wandering the streets, trying to find someone to lend him money. But while he is walking, his chest starts to hurt and he has to go to the hospital. The doctor tells him that he has coronary artery disease and needs to be treated. But Mr. Six refuses because he doesn't think he has the luxury of being hospitalized, especially now. He needs every penny to free his son, but she is willing to give it to him if Mr. Six has an operation after solving Xiaobo's problem. When Hua Xiazi finishes showering, she finds a package with Mr. Six's certificate. He left it for her in exchange for the money she gave him, and he did not tell her earlier because he knew she would reject it. Meanwhile, Mr. Six goes to the garage with Scrapper to pick up Xiaobo and settle the debt. But they find Deng Zhao busy repairing Chris's Ferrari. Deng Zhao thinks that Mr. Six is unable to raise the money Chris asked him for in such a short time. Now, the cost to repair his car requires more than 100,000 yuan, but Mr. Six has no more money to compensate for the further damage. But Chris is not the only one who is angry. Chris's friend, who slapped Mr. Six, shouted at him and insulted him. But this time Mr. Six has no patience. He grabs the young man's index finger and snaps it as Scrapper steps forward to confront the other gang members. Chris then says he wants to resolve the conflict by fighting, but not at this time. So he suggests to Mr. Six that they settle the matter with a group fight the following week. The winners of the fight can do whatever they want to the losers, including taking everything they have. Mr. Six accepts the challenge, even though he knows that his former gang members are not so young anymore. Mr. Six sends letters to his former gang members, but none of them accept the challenge. Hua Xiazi still tries to convince Mr. Six to report him to the police, but he still ignores her. As they argue, Hua Xiazi's cell phone rings, and the person on the other end asks her out. It is Xiaobo, who is being escorted home by Chris's girlfriend. The girl gives him back the money Mr. Six gave Chris, reminding him that he no longer needs the money because they will solve their problems by fighting. He finds the 100,000 yuan bill. But he also finds a strange letter that he does not understand. He throws the letter in the trash. When Xiaobo returns home, he makes no attempt to improve his relationship with his father. They continue to argue, forcing Hua Xiazi to intervene. He explains to her that he is cold to Mr. Six because his father never paid attention to him or loved him, even when he was a child. Xiazi begs Xiaobo to reconcile with his father and give him another chance. So they try to talk to each other in a friendly way, and their relationship gradually improves. Unfortunately, Xiaobo's Mr. Six illness returns and he is taken to the hospital. There, Xiaobo learns of his father's coronary artery disease, and the doctor tells him that his condition has worsened. He must undergo surgery if he wants to get better. But Mr. Six refuses, even though Matchstick is willing to pay all the costs of hospitalization and surgery. One night, Mr. Six and Xiaobo leave the hospital, ignoring Hua Xiazi. When they return home, Mr. Six and Xiaobo discover that the house has been ransacked. They have also killed Mr. Six's bird. His heart breaks when he sees it, but there is nothing he can do but bury it. On their way home, Mr. Six and Xiaobo are intercepted by Chris's gang members, who demand that Mr. Six hand over the letter. He says he did not receive a letter, but they do not believe him. Mr. Six is then forced to fight them, telling Xiaobo to get help. But Xiaobo sees his father collapse after being attacked by the thugs, so he goes back to help him. One of them hits Xiaobo from behind with an iron pipe, knocking him unconscious. Soon after, he is taken to the hospital. When he sees his son in bed, Mr. Six's gangster soul awakens. He takes Scrapper and his gang to Chris's workshop for revenge. But it turns out to be empty. Suddenly the phone rings and Mr. Six answers a call from someone asking him to return the letter. The man explains that the letter was in the package with the money he received the other day. Realizing what they are talking about, Mr. Six immediately returns to his home to look for it. He discovers that the letter is Chris's bank statement. His father has opened an account in Chris's name at a Swiss bank and is using it to store the money he received from the bribery. With this information, Mr. Six meets with Chris to renegotiate. Chris says he will give Mr. Six a lot of money if the letter is returned. But Chris still wants to fight as planned, and Mr. Six agrees. When the day of the fight arrives, Mr. Six sends the letter to the DA's office before going to the fight site. Scrapper meets with Mr. Six's former henchmen and asks them to help him one last time. Mr. Six arrives at the frozen lake where the battle will take place. Carrying only his sword, he approaches Chris and his men before shouting to announce his arrival. But suddenly Scrapper, Deng Zhao, Hua Xiazi and his former henchmen arrive to help him fight his enemies. So Mr. Six starts running towards his enemies with his sword. He runs and runs until his body betrays him. Eventually, he dies of his illness before he can use his sword to defeat the enemy. But his courage has motivated his former henchmen, who rush to replace him in battle. And they win. Eventually, Mr. Six's men are imprisoned for a while before being released due to their group's influence. On the other hand, Xiaobo has fully recovered and has managed to carry out his plan with his father to open a bar. Then the bar's TV shows a news report about Chris's father being arrested for corruption. If you liked the video, Please like, comment and subscribe. Thanks for watching.